The observation deck of the Valiant Claw shook with another round of snarls and screeches. Kara pressed her palm against the reinforced viewport, watching the chaos unfold in the communal den below. 3 Vacrian cubs, apex predators from a death world that made Earth look like a garden paradise, were locked in a vicious battle over a single protein slab. Their claws, already 15 centimeters long despite their youth, tore at each other's thick hides. Bioluminescent blood splattered across the metal floor. The eldest, a male named Rock, had the meat pinned beneath his massive paw, but the other 2 weren't backing down. In Vacrian culture, strength determined everything, even among children. "They'll kill each other," Commander Thexanol clicked from behind her, his mandibles twitching with what Kara had learned to recognize as concern. "This is the 3rd fight today. We've tried separating them, but isolation drives them mad. We've tried flooding the den with food, but they hoard and guard. Nothing works." Kara turned from the viewport, her small human frame dwarfed by the insectoid commander's chitinous bulk. "How long until their parents return from the front?" 2 cycles. Maybe 3. Thexanol's compound eyes reflected the emergency lights. By then there may be no cubs left to return to. The galactic community had learned much about humans in the 5 years since first contact. They'd learned that humans were weaker than most species, slower than many, and possessed none of the natural weapons that evolution had granted to proper predators. But they'd also learned something that baffled the Coalition's finest xenopsychologists. Humans excelled at the impossible. Kara grabbed her emergency supply pack from her locker. "Open the den." Negative. "Absolutely not." Thexanol blocked her path with one bladed forelimb. "Those cubs are juveniles, yes, but a Vacrian juvenile could tear a human apart in seconds. Their bite force exceeds—" "I know the statistics, Commander." Kara's voice was calm, carrying that peculiar human quality the Coalition had come to both fear and admire, absolute certainty in the face of suicide. "Open the den or I'll override the locks myself." The commander studied her for a long moment, then his translator crackled with what might have been a sigh. "Humans," he muttered, keying in his command codes. The reinforced door hissed open. The sounds of combat grew louder. Wet snarls, the scrape of claws on metal, the meaty thud of bodies colliding. Kara stepped through and the door sealed behind her with a finality that made her heart race. 3 pairs of eyes, each one glowing with predatory intelligence far beyond anything Earth's animals possessed, locked onto her immediately. The fighting stopped. Rock's jaws dripped with his siblings' blood, the meat forgotten beneath his massive paw. He was already the size of a full-grown lion, and he wouldn't reach adolescence for another year. Kara sat down cross-legged on the floor. Slowly, deliberately, she opened her pack and withdrew 3 protein bars, standard human rations, chocolate-flavored, because some comforts were worth the cargo space. The cubs watched, confused. In their world, the strong took and the weak fled. This tiny, soft creature was neither taking nor fleeing. She was doing something that didn't fit into their evolutionary playbook. Kara unwrapped the first bar and took a small bite. The cubs tensed, thinking perhaps this was challenge behavior. But instead of eating the rest or protecting her food, Kara broke the bar into 3 pieces. She placed one piece on the floor in front of her, then tossed the other 2 gently toward the cubs who'd been losing the fight. They flinched at first, expecting an attack. When none came, they sniffed at the strange offering. Cautiously, the smaller female cub picked up the piece with her teeth. The texture was wrong, the smell was alien, but it was food. Freely given. The concept was so foreign it might as well have been magic. Rock growled, a deep rumble that Kara felt in her chest. He abandoned his meat and stalked toward her, muscles rippling beneath his scaled hide. This was the moment. This was where human theories about empathy and social bonding either worked or got her torn to shreds. Kara didn't move. She didn't bare her teeth or raise her voice. She simply sat there holding the 3rd piece of her ration bar, meeting Rock's burning gaze with steady brown eyes. "You're strong," she said softly, knowing he couldn't understand her words but hoping he'd understand her tone. "The strongest here. But strength isn't just about fighting, Rock. It's about protecting. It's about choosing when not to fight." Rock stopped a meter away, his hot breath washing over her. This close, she could see the intelligence in his eyes, the confusion, the curiosity, the beginning of something that might have been understanding. His species had conquered their world through violence, yes, but they'd built a civilization afterward. That required something more than just claws and teeth. Kara extended her hand, the ration bar resting on her palm. An offering, a gesture of trust so profound it bordered on insanity. In Vakrian culture, showing vulnerability was death. But this human sat before him completely defenseless, and instead of cowering or attacking, she was sharing. Rock's massive head dipped lower. His jaws could crush her skull with less effort than Kara needed to crack a walnut. For 3 heartbeats, time seemed to freeze. Then, with surprising gentleness, Rock took the ration bar from her hand. He didn't snatch it or tear her fingers off in his hunger. He took it the way a student takes a lesson from a teacher. The other cubs approached slowly, drawn by this strange new dynamic. Kara reached into her pack and pulled out more rations. This time she didn't throw them. She waited until each cub came to her, until they learned that food could be received without violence, that resources could be shared without weakness. She broke each bar into smaller pieces, distributing them evenly. When Rock growled at his siblings for coming too close, Kara placed a hand on his snout, a touch that should have ended in bloodshed, but instead made the massive predator pause. "Share," she whispered. Hours passed. The observation deck crew watched in stunned silence as the human did the impossible. She sat among killers and taught them peace, not through dominance or fear, but through example, through the simple revolutionary idea that survival didn't have to mean someone else's death. When Kara finally stood to leave, her rations depleted and her legs cramped from sitting so long, Rock followed her to the door. He pushed his head against her side, not hard enough to knock her down, but firm enough to communicate something the translators couldn't quite capture. Connection, gratitude, the beginning of something that transcended species. "Commander," Thexnell was waiting when she emerged. That was, "I have no words in any of the coalition languages." Kara smiled tiredly. "On Earth we have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I guess it works across species." Behind her, through the viewport, the 3 cubs lay together peacefully, their bellies full of chocolate-flavored protein bars. Rock had his paw draped over his siblings, not pinning them down but protecting them. He'd learned that strength without compassion was just brutality. It was a lesson his species would need as they grew from cubs into the Coalition's most formidable warriors. It was a lesson only a human could have taught, because humans, for all their physical weakness, possessed a weapon more powerful than any claw or fang. They knew how to turn enemies into family, one shared meal at a time, and that, the galaxy was learning, was the most dangerous and most beautiful thing about humanity.